Okay, I want to start with the prayer of thanksgiving because that first part actually did upload so I can go forward. I want to just thank the Father. Father, I thank you for getting that video in a format and in a size that it did upload to YouTube and it can be shared. I ask your blessing on the second portion as well. Help me to get your patterns that I see in the way you use your words, your patterns that I see on the land of Israel, your patterns I see in your actions. Help me to carry those patterns with clarity across to everyone who sees these videos. I ask this in the mighty, magnificent, beautiful name of our Messiah, Yeshua. Amen. Okay, so let's get started and pick up on part B of understanding this wrath that comes with the grape harvest, because we're going to see this wrath in a surprising place. And we're going to see how big and how many people this very same covenant that Israel was offered, actually how many people it was offered to. Okay, as I had told you at the first half of the film, the part A, I really thought that I was going to be studying, or I felt like I had stumbled into studying two different subjects, which actually was one subject because God knit them together for me. But the subject of the other thing I was studying besides the grape harvest was a location that had come into my scope here at the bottom of the hill from where I live. I live up on a ridge above the Sea of Galilee in a moshav called Perea Elite. And where the plateau that we live drops down about maybe 600 feet, because the Sea of Galilee is below sea level. I think it's 300 feet below sea level, and I think we're 300 feet above sea level. So this where the edge of our community ends, then there's a slope up to our ridge, slope up to the plateau. This, of course, it's got some olive orchards, fruit like papaya, it's not papaya, mango, dates. On the way down to, you reach the Canaanite. And I go down this ridge hill, this road, to an area called Zemak all the time, where I do my shopping. And these 5 years, I've been going past a high school called a high school Bet Yerach. And I would always look at that and I would really wonder why a high school would be called Bet Yerach. Bet Yerach means house moon, literally, or house of the moon. If you are predisposed as the scholars, they say it's house of the moon god with a little g, but we'll get into some of that. Anyway, I would go past this location and I would wonder at the name. So, just like the 12 spies story, one day I'm doing research on a different subject in the internet, and this tell, what is a tell? A tell is, in Israel, we basically are a desert with a bunch of oases. And everywhere where there's an ayin, like I talked about in the first video, an ayin, this is the source of light. An ayin can be a source of water, okay? Every time there was an ayin on the earth here in Israel, a source of water, communities would build there because there's water there. You don't want to live out in the desert where there's no water. You don't want to live where you've got to schlep water for kilometers to do your daily chores. And so a civilization was built around this source of water. And they would be conquered, destroyed, whatever, and another one would build on top of their ruins, and another one would build on top of their ruins, and another one would build on top of their ruins. Eventually, this becomes a mound or a tell. So this tell came into my vision as I was doing this research, and I realized that it was not the name of a high school for the sake of naming a high school. It was that the high school was named after this ancient civilization. And as I begin to dig into this, what really caught my attention, and I said in the last video, I'll be making a YouTube about my understanding of the new moon and why we use it to begin our biblical months. As I said in that video, it ties into how we use the moon to understand when a biblical month begins. So just briefly, Mount Zion is a double-peaked ridge, two mountain range ridge, or two mountain range, if you want to call it that. And it is the shape of a new crescent moon. The word Zion means a signal or a marker. And Zion has the shape of a specific new crescent moon whose horns, the points, okay, like this is your crescent moon. Drawing a picture's worth 1,000 words. So let me do that. So these are horns, the points of the moon, okay? And actually, for your purposes, that's backwards. So I'll turn it this way. These are the horns, okay? If this is north, this is south. I'm doing this backwards so you can read it. This is, whoops, east. This is west, okay? This is the way that Crescent Ridge lays in Jerusalem. The old cities up, old cities down here. The old city is up here, above the crescent-shaped ridge in the north, okay? On the new moon, when I see them in this night sky in Israel, the horns always face east. In the direction the sun will rise. Bet Yerech, this very ancient civilization we're going to talk about, has the shape of a new crescent moon. And this is not a coincidence. And for me, it's very exciting because here we have more patterns. So I'm just going to give you some background on Bet Yerech. Let me share from my screen. And I'm just going to go to several websites. All righty. So I'm going to run all the way back here to the top. We're not going to look at every one of these pictures. I'm going to just talk about some of these. Bet Yerech, is on the south end of the Sea of Galilee, where the Jordan River flows out and continues southward to the Sea of Galilee. Here we go. So this large tail is on the southwest side of the Sea of Galilee. That means it faces southeast. One of the most remarkable early bronze sites in Israel. Okay, it also flourished during the Hellenistic period. It was given another name. During the Roman Byzantine periods, it was occupied by the Muslims. In fact, history tells us that the imam, the leader that was in this area, had his summer palace here while he built the original, what is it called, mosque on top of the Temple Mount. And then it was known as Cinnabre. All right, so here's the background. Tel Bet Yerach is one of the remarkable Bronze Age sites in the Holy Land. It's large size, 80 acres, massive brick walls, 8 meters thick, natural protection surrounded by water. Not anymore, but it was, and we have proof. Strategic location, crossroads passing the southern side of the Sea of Galilee. Important factors that made it one of the strongest cities in the early Bronze Age for over 4 millennium ago. So Tel Bet Yerach is, they say, older than the Giza Pyramid and older than Stonehenge, to give you an idea of how old this location is. This site is located on the hills of the shore of the Sea of Galilee at the southwest corner. It stretches between the modern bridge of the Ganyas, that's the name of two kibbutzim, and the high school of Bet Yerek, the one I wandered out, on its south side. Up the north, where the buildings of Holo is, that's the hotel resort, up to the Canaanite cemetery. The Tel rises above the shoreline on its east side and Zilach Tiberias Road on its west side. Okay, so this was a peninsula at one time. It was a raised peninsula, okay? The roads at this side were once major trade routes, trade highways to the ancient world, which made it important. And then it tells you it went to the north, to Damascus, Mesopotamia, to the south, it went to Bet Shean, where those beautiful springs were that I showed you in the last video. Megiddo, which is Armageddon in the Revelation in the King James Bible in the New Testament. Jericho, that's another equally old civilization. Yerushalayim, and then to Egypt, Mitzrayim. On the west, past my house, nearby the Yavniel Creek through Mount Tabor. This is the mount of, where they believe the Mount of Transfiguration and the Mount of Ascension was. The horns of Hattim, Hattim means wheat, and Hanathan, arriving to the coast of Acre and the Via Mars, the north-south road. East through Hamat, that's the word for the hot springs, to Syria and Jordan. Okay, so here we have, right here in this photo, an overview, and not a good one, of this area. And I want to show you some things here. This is the new dam for the Jordan. This is where it goes into the Deganyas over on down in here. This over here is actually considered the Kibbutz Canaanite, but down over in here and off the map is where it goes into the Deganya Kibbutzim. You can almost see here where these trees are still green and all of this stays so green. You can almost see here where the water would have come around, okay? This Zimach Tiberias Road, Zimach is way back over here. Tiberias is way up here. This Zimach Tiberias Road, when they put it in, they found a land bridge in this area that connected this island peninsula to Cinnabar, this area where the Muslim had his summer palace, and that is in the Moshava Canaanite. Okay, so that's the history. Now I want to show you, let me stop sharing this, and I'll share this. Whoops. Let me cancel this. Sorry, guys. Hang on just a second. I'm going to blow it up so it makes it easier to see. Okay, I want to see if I can share this screen. There it is. This is actually how they had the Jordan flowing. My understanding of how this would have worked, since I know that the water flows from the north to the south in the Jordan to go down to the Dead Sea, is that the water probably would have entered in on this north side as well as this south side, and they would have merged together here at this point and then gone on down to the Dead Sea. So this reflects, and right here it reflects where the land bridge would have been in this area right here. And of course, this is where the Muslim had his summer palace was up here, but he had all of this in this area. Okay, now I want to stop sharing and show you another photo of how this piece of property looks today in our day. And you can see very, very plainly, that's not a very clear picture. Let me get it clearer. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of distortion here as I share this because it's a small, the pixels are not very good. All right, here we go. This is an aerial view of that region right now. If you look at this and you realize that this is the Moshava Canaanite, and that the bridge was there and that the river would have ran behind this, we see a very prominent new crescent moon shape. And I will tell you some of this and some of this, I believe a bit of this has been built up. This would have been much more prominent in 30, 50 Common Era, as they say. And you can see even the greenery here, this line here, even though there's not water, you can see the trees are still very green. By the way, when I say I drove past this every day, I live right up here at the top of this little ridge right here. And to go shopping, I'm coming right down through here, right down through here, right down through there, and going back over in here. And I'm looking at Bet Yerach every day, Bet Yerach every day, and wondering about that. So the timing wasn't right, but the timing's right now. So as I begin to look at this, at the same time I was studying about the grapes, I began to see some interesting patterns because we, the people of Elohim, were given Mount Zion, which is a new crescent-shaped moon, to know for sure that we are to observe the new moon, the first appearing new moon in the night sky. And so this really piqued my curiosity. Here we have two non-man-made, made by our Elohim, crescent moon shapes, which, by the way, let me open that back up because I didn't finish talking. Let me share it again. Share screen. Here we go. These horns faced east. Sunrise is right over here. On this side across the Canaanite is the Jordan and Syria side where the sun will rise. Okay, the sun will set over here. Science tells you that the moon is illuminated on the side that the setting sun hits it. And the setting sun hits the moon from the west. And so the horns point to the east where the sun will rise. And this fits a God-constructed signal or landmark in the earth here in Israel. Okay, hang on. Okay, some more points on this location is that we know that they found evidence that the Egyptians were here. They described their time here from 0 to 1 dynasty, very, very early on. When is 0 to 1 dynasty? Well, that would have to be right after the time of Noah, because Ham had a son named Mitzrayim who established Egypt. That's what we call Egypt today in Hebrew. It's Mitzrayim. So that 0 to 1 dynasty would come at the time after the flood that the Egyptians were in possession of this land, which, by the way, the same is true of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, because when you go tour the city of David, one of the first things they tell you is the original inhabitants of this land, of the tell of the city of David, was Egypt. So there's no discrepancy there. Later on, we're going to see that when the Israelites were to take possession of the land, that it was the Canaanites, all the ites, that were in the land, that they were to dispossess them of this land. The other thing that's really interesting about this location is that there were 8 silos, actually there were subterranean silos that didn't stand above the earth. There were 8 round bins for storing grain, 8 that they found, and they've never found any other grain bins like this in all of Israel. Okay, so since I'm rebuilding here what I've already taught once and couldn't get uploaded, I'm going to be doing a lot of pausing as I go in and I look again at what I need to say and bringing these nuggets out. So just bear with me as I make these pauses, because I want to make sure I don't miss anything in the path along the way to where we're going. Okay, so they're telling us that in the early Bronze Age, which is about the 40th century Common Era, they're saying 3150 BC, this is an old article, so they're still using BC, to 2200 BC, it was inhabited, and it was known then as the Moon City. During the Hellenistic period, in the 2nd century, when the Greeks had possessed the land of Israel, it was called Philateria. In the Hasmonean period, when they threw the Greeks out, it became Cinnabre. But in the early Roman period, again, it was called Cinnabre. And in the early Roman period, in the Roman Byzantine period, it was called Cinnabre. And then the Arab periods, it was called Tel Karach. So they rename everything. Tel Karach. Okay. What else do I want to tell you about this from this website? We're almost finished here because I don't want to bore you too much with the history, other than to show you that this pretty much has always had some kind of civilization on it. So let me pause. So this location is not mentioned by name in the Bible. It is mentioned in the Mishnah. It is not mentioned in the writings of Josephus by its later known names. I'm going to share another screen with you. Okay, so 15 centuries later, they say that Tel Bet Yerach was established about 30 centuries ago. 15 centuries later, we're going to see that in Syria, they find a Uruguite civilization with 3 stone tablets that are pretty complete. And one of these stone tablets mention this Tel that I'm interested in, that I'm telling you about. And here it is, that this Tel of Ahat is a Canaanite myth from Uruguay, okay? This is in Syria, the northern part of Syria. What is interesting about this, let me go to this with you, is this Ahat in this story Ahat had a father named Don El. Don El means judge of God. Right there, Don El. El is judge. Okay, that's what it means. In these tablets, we're going to see forms of righteous judgment. Right here, I think it was, hang on, let me find it for you. Pause sharing, stop sharing. I gotta find that little statement. Here we go. Right here. It says that in the Epic of Ahat, Don El is depicted as judging the cause of the widows and adjudicating the cases of the fatherless in the city gates. Now, this is absolutely where things were judged in ancient Israel, and absolutely rules of Torah, okay? Yes, there are pagan practices. So before we throw out the baby with the bathwater, for how long did Elohim deal with Israel while they had their pagan practices, but they kept some of the things that he commanded them, some of the points of Torah, for quite a while? Now here's where it gets interesting. Right down here, the Daniel in the book of Ezekiel. There are 3 verses in the book of Ezekiel, and it gives them Ezekiel 14:14. We can see if we can click on it. 14:14. These 3 men, Noah, it says Daniel, but we're going to address that when we go back there, and Job were in it. They should deliver only their own souls by their righteousness, saying, saith the Lord. Okay, this is talking about the land and trespassing against him grievously. So this fits our subject. So if these 3 men, and I'm going to say Noah, I'm not going to say Daniel, I'm going to say Daniel, because that's what is actually written. The Masoretic text changed it. And Job were in it, were in the land. They should deliver their own souls by their own righteousness. Okay, I'm going to go back. Now we're going to go to 14:20. Though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, as I live, saith the Lord, they should deliver neither son nor daughter, but deliver their own souls by their righteousness. Again, I'm going to go back. We're going to look at the next one, and 28:23. Where did it go? Let's go back and click that again. 28:3. That's why I couldn't find it. Right here. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret they can hide from thee. Now let's go back to the text and consider what they have to say. Because remember, there were righteous prophets that dealt with wicked Israel and wicked Judah, wicked house of Israel, wicked house of Judah for centuries before God made it into that situation. So the fact that I'm seeing here Daniel having righteous judgment and multiple gods actually is a mirror image of what Israel did, if you stop and think about it. Let's read it. The 3 verses in the book of Ezekiel refer to Daniel, which according to the Masoretic text should read Daniel. Notwithstanding, parallels and contrasts with Daniel of the book of Ezekiel placed between Noah and Job. Who were Noah and Job? Neither one of those people were Israelites. Okay? Noah predated Abraham, who predated Jacob, who became Israel. So did Job. Okay, and the text puts Daniel after the flood and before Job. Okay, and invokes a very example of righteous judgment. The first pointed out, and tells who pointed out, many readers commonly to accept or occasionally to reject. Okay, so this Greek text of Daniel in Achat shows some of the same judgments of God being used by a people that we have not been aware of, or let's rephrase it, we have not recognized, would have had a covenant that had the same terms that were given to the Israelites. That's a lot to digest, and I'm not going to say it again. I'm going to ask you not to reject it, and I'm going to ask you to continue to follow with me. These three figures referred to in Ezekiel 14:14, even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, links the names of, well, there you go, two non-Israelites of great antiquity. In the Ezekiel 28:3, Daniel is noted for his wisdom in the prophecy addressed to the king of Tyre. You are indeed wiser than Daniel. No secret is hidden from you. The name Daniel has a long tradition in Hebrew culture, as he is supplied as the father of Enoch in Jubilees. All right, so I want to stop sharing that. And I want to start suggesting to you that I can show you in other situations where Elohim, our Yah, our El, has used his covenant terminology to people groups that predate the 12 tribes. So let's look at some more. Okay, so we have not recognized something in Genesis. There's a passage in Genesis 15. Let's just go there. Let's see if I can share this with you. This is Genesis 15. This is when Elohim makes a covenant with Abraham. Abraham says, what are you going to give me? Because I have no seed, no one who's born in my house. And he promised him, he brought him forth and told him to look towards the heavens and tell the stars if you're able to number them, and his seed will be like this. And he believed God, and because he believed God, it was counted for him as righteousness. And let's see. Then he tells him to take this golden heifer and these sacrifices. And he tells them that he's to divide them in the midst and to lay one piece against the other, okay? That the birds don't divide them. And so he does this, and the sun goes down, and we know that there was the... let's see, where does it go? It says, for surely thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them. They're down there more than 400 years, but they shall afflict them for 400 years. Also that nation whom they serve, I will judge. So he's going to judge the nation who they're serving during the affliction. And afterwards, I will bring them out with great substance. This is important. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation, his descendants, they shall come out hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites are not full. Now an Amorite is a descendant of Canaan. All the ites in the Old Testament are descendants of Canaan. And then the next verse is when the smoking furnace and the burning lamp passed between those pieces. Okay, so why is that important? Well, I'm going to see if I can do this without changing my screen. Hang on. Okay. Exodus 1:8. Now a new king over Egypt. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it came to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Okay, so then this is when they begin to set taskmasters and inflict burdens on them, and they built for Pharaoh and all of this stuff, and they were afflicted and all of this. Okay, so why is this important? Because we see right here, 40 short years after God, Elohim, put Joseph in his position, suddenly no one knew Joseph. Suddenly no one knew the Israelites. I want to show you something. really quick. Go right here. Okay, this is the 14th dynasty of Egypt. And we see that Avartus is mentioned. Avartus is possibly the name of Goshen before it was called Goshen. And we see that the rulers of the 14th dynasty are commonly identified by Egyptologists as being of Canaanite descent, owing to the distinct origins of some of their names and princes. Now I have to stop sharing because I can't change screens. It won't follow. Let me go here and share again. Okay, this is David Rowe. I love his work. He is the Egyptologist that you will find that provides a lot of information on a video called Patterns of Evidence. And if we look right here, Joseph arrives in this basically 13th dynasty, okay? And apparently there's some kind of or 12th dynasty. There's a 13th dynasty right here. But then look what happens. There's a 14th that comes in right here. And that's that 14th dynasty. This is where Joseph comes in, probably 40 years here, and then a new Pharaoh, but probably Joseph dies someplace in the middle right here. So probably about the time of the dynasty change. And then a new Pharaoh comes in right here at the beginning of this 14th dynasty, which we know were considered Canaanites. Well, what they're not recognizing is that Mitzrayim actually wasn't a Canaanite. He was from Ham. So Canaanite would have been from the line of Canaan, which would have reflected Amorites, who was a Canaanite, a descendant of Cain, that Elohim had spoken to Abraham about. Okay. Why is this important? Some of this will be redundant if you've seen Colossians 14, but it bears repeating. So let me get a scripture for you. Here we go. Isaiah 16:4. This is what Elohim gave the people when he brought them out of Egypt. And he took them as a wife at Mount Sinai when they entered into a brit, a covenant, a marriage of intimacy with him. Isaiah 16:4. And as for thy nativity, in the day thou wast born, thy navel was not cut, neither wast thou washed in water to supple thee. Thou wast not salted at all or swaddled at all. None I pitied thee to do of these unto thee, to have compassion upon thee, but thou wast cast into an open field to the loathing of thy person in the day that thou wast born. This is talking about Egypt. They were slaves. They were working in basically the fields, building the pyramids, everything that Egypt needed, their slaves were doing for them. And when I passed by thee and saw thee polluted in thy own blood, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. Yea, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. I have caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field. Thou hast increased and waxen great. So this is the bud of the field. This is the time of the spring feasts. They come out at Pesach. Okay, so this is perfect language that reflects the calendar and the timing of Elohim bringing them out of the Passover. And thou art come into excellent ornaments, thy breasts are fashioned, thy hair is grown, whereas thou wast naked and bare. For when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, thy time was a time of love, and I spread my skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness. Yea, I swear unto thee, and I entered into a covenant with thee, saith the Lord God, and thou becamest mine. He married them. Then washed I thee with water, yea, thoroughly washed away the blood from thee, and anointed thee with oil. I clothed thee also with broidered work, and shod thee with badger skin. I girded thee about with fine linen, and covered thee with silk. I decked thee also with ornaments, and I put bracelet upon thy hands, and a chain upon thy neck, and a jewel upon thy forehead, an earring in thy ears, and a beautiful crown upon thy head. Thou wast decked with gold and silver, and thy raiment was of fine linen, silk, and broidered work. Thou didst eat fine flour, honey, and oil, and thou wast exceedingly beautiful. Thou didst prosper in the kingdom. And thou renown went among the heathens for thy beauty, for it was perfect through my comeliness, which I had put on thee. Okay, I want to show you what they walked out of Egypt with, but before I show you that, please remember what we've just read, and I want to show you first what Elohim is going to take away from them when they break their covenant. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure I am seeing this. Yes, here we go. Okay. And in that day, the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments, this says about their feet, and their cowls, and their round tires like moon. Well, I don't know what the interpreters of King James was thinking about. That's literally a round pendant, and their round pendant, and the chains and bracelets, and the mufflers, and the bonnets, and the ornaments of the legs, and the headbands, and the tablets, and the earrings, the rings and the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, the mantles, the wimples, the crisping pins, the glasses, the fine linen, and the hoods. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be a stink. Instead of a girdle, a rent. Instead of a well-set hair, baldness. Instead of a stomacher, a girdling of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. This is what Elohim was going to take away from Israel. These were the ornaments they inherited when they married him at Sinai. Now, I want to show you what Israel walked out of Egypt with. I'm just going to take you there with me. Why not? And we're just going to come right up here and do a search. Pull this back up. And every woman, speaking of the Israelites when they were walking out of Egypt, and I will give the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. The Amorites, actually, these were Amorites by now. They lived in Egypt. And it shall come to pass that when you go out, ye shall not go out empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor and of her that sojourn in her house jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment, and put them on your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil Egypt. At the same time that Elohim was taking the Israelites as his bride, that he would marry 40 days later, whatever it was, about 40 days later at Sinai, 50 days later at Sinai. As he was taking them as a bride, he was stripping the Amorites of the same thing he told Israel he would strip of them because of their unfaithfulness as his bride. Do you see the pattern of covenant talk? I've made some notes here I want to jot down. What did he give the Israelites when he took her? He gave them the wealth of Egypt. What did he take from the Amorites? The wealth. What did the Amorites take from the Canaanites? The land. What did Elohim do to the northern and southern kingdom when they had broken his covenant enough that he had had his fill of them? He took them off the land. We see Elohim dispossessing the Canaanites and giving it to Israel. And then we see Elohim dispossessing the Israelites by taking them off the land, the way he told the Israelites to take them off the land. And we see that he is dealing with both of these, all of these nations with the same treatment according to the same rules. I want to show you something here. Go back and screen share. We're going to go up here and we're going to search, and we're just going to put in Sodom. 47 verses found 48 times. Now, the first few times, all of these Genesis verses, all the way down through verse 14:22. This is all dealing with specifically Sodom. In verse 18, we're seeing the destruction of Sodom. Okay. 19, the destruction of Sodom. That's about 20 times. Then we're going to see, let's start looking at some of these other instances where Sodom is referenced, because we're going to see that Elohim is threatening Israel with the same destruction that he caused in Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, here we go. This is, go back up here. This is Deuteronomy 29, okay? Let's just start reading on 29:2. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he brought them, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. And Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, Ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt, unto Pharaoh and unto his servants and unto all of his land, the great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord hath not given you a heart to perceive, or eyes to hear, or ears to hear, until this day. I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. And this Moses is waxing down, and he's talking to them, not waxing down, he's winding down. He's talking to them about the history. So we're going to go just about here at 17. And you have seen their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them, lest there should be any among you, man or woman or family or tribe, whose heart turning away from this day from the Lord our God to go and serve the gods of these nations, lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. That goes back to that cup of vengeance. And it came pass when he heareth the words of this, and it come to pass that when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself with his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. The Lord shall not spare him, but then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord will blot out his name from under heaven. The Lord will separate him unto evil out of all the tribes according to the curses of the covenant that's written in this book, so that the generation to come of your children shall rise up after you, and the strangers shall come from a far land and say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sickness which the Lord hath laid upon it, and the whole land thereof is burning and salt, brimstone and salt and burning, that is not sown, nor beareth, nor any grass therein, like the overthrow, like the overthrow. And right now, I'm telling you, the whole land of Israel is salt and burning. Okay, it's hard to sow it. It's hard to get it to bear because we have dry seasons and we have green season. There's no grass that grows here except for in the early part of the year. Okay, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and wrath. Anger and wrath. When is the time of anger and wrath? It doesn't change. Let's go back up here and look for some more. Oh my goodness, I want you to see this. Deuteronomy 32:32. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and their fields and of the fields of Gomorrah, and their grapes are grapes of gall, and their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons, cruel venom of asp. Is it not laid up in store with me and sealed among my treasures? To me belongeth vengeance and recompense, and their foot shall slide in due time. For the day of their calamity is hand, and the things that come upon them make haste. Okay, and he talks about this. Here it is, Deuteronomy 32:41. If I whip my glittering sword, the sickle sword, okay, forgot the name of it, the Hadash sword that we see used for the new moon. If I whip my glittering sword and my hand take hold on my judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies and reward them that hate thee. Okay, this is the talk of the grape harvest. Hang on, didn't mean to do that one. Let's go back here. Isaiah 1:9, except the Lord of hosts had left us a very small remnant, we should be as Sodom, and we should have been like unto Gomorrah. Isaiah 9:10, hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. He's now speaking to Jerusalem. Give ear unto the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. Isaiah 3:9, the show of their countenance does witness against them. They declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rendered evil unto themselves. Again, the prophets in Jerusalem, a horrible thing. They commit adultery. They walk in lies. They strengthen the hands of evildoers. None return from his wickedness. They are all unto me as Sodom and the inhabitants of Gomorrah. Jeremiah 49:19, as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall a son of man dwell in it. Jeremiah 40:50, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, so no man shall abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell in it. Lamentations 4:6, for the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom that was overthrown in a moment and no hands stayed on her. This is the one I want to break down with you. Thou art thy mother's daughter that loatheth thy husband and her children. Thou art the sister of thy sisters, which loatheth their husband and loatheth their children. Your mother was a Hittite, and your father was an Amorite. Thy elder sister is Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at thy left hand. Thy younger sister dwelleth at thy right hand. She is Sodom and her daughters. Okay, so this daughter, who is Judah, who Elohim is talking to, he calls Sodom her sister. There is a reason for that. And the reason's name is Noah. Noah is the father of us all. Yet hast thou not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations. But as if it were a little thing, thou wast more corrupt than they in all their ways. As I live, saith the Lord God, Sodom thy sister hath not done, she nor her daughters, as thou hast done, thou and thy daughters. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, the abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hands of the poor and needy. They were haughty and committed abomination before me. Behold, I took them away as I saw good. Neither has Syria committed half of thy sins, but thou hast multiplied thy abominations more than they, and hast justified thy sisters and all all thine abominations which thou hast done. So in other words, the appearance of Judah was like they were righteous. Isn't that what he says in Jeremiah? That even after Jerusalem had seen all that her sister Ephraim had done, which was Samaria, that she became twice the harlot, and that Samaria or Ephraim was more righteous than Judah. And we're going to see it here in this next verse. Thou also which have judged thy sisters, bear thine own shame for thy sins that thou hast committed more abominably than them. They are more righteous than thou. Yea, be thou confounded also, and bear thy shame, in that thou hast justified thy sisters. I'm going to keep going. When I shall bring again their captivity, the captivity of Sodom and her sisters, the captivity of Samaria and her, when I shall bring again their captivity, the captivity of Sodom and her daughters, and the captivity of Samaria and her daughters, then I will bring again the captivity of thy captivities in the midst of them, that thou may bear thy own shame and be confounded in all that thou hast done, in that thou art a comfort unto them. When thy sister Sodom and her daughters are returned to their former state, and Samaria and her daughters shall return to their former state, then thou and thy daughters shall return to your former state. For thy sister Sodom was not mentioned by thy mouth in the day of thy pride, before thy wickedness was discovered, as at the time of thy reproach of the daughters of Syria, and all round about her, the daughters of the Philistines, which despise thee round about. Okay. He says here, for thus saith the Lord, I will even deal with thee as thou hast done, which hath despised the oath in breaking the covenant. And this is where we see that the cup was given to, in the other teaching, Colossians 2:14, the cup was given to Syria, to Aholah, and Aholabah in this chapter, the two sisters, the northern and southern kingdoms. But now Elohim's brought in a third sister. I want to ask you, what is the time of vengeance and wrath? It is the time of the grape harvest. Elohim said he would judge Jerusalem the way he judged Sodom. When he destroyed Jerusalem, the temple, it was in the 5th and 6th month during the grape and fig harvest. I'm going to tell you, because he said that Sodom's vine and grape, Deuteronomy 32, let's go back there. Share. I'm going to tell you, because he said their vine is the vine of Sodom, and the fields of Gomorrah, their grapes are the grapes of Gaul, and their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons, and the cruel venom of asps. Okay, and then he says that vengeance belongs to him and recompense. I'm going to tell you and suggest to you that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed in the 5th and 6th month. probably the 5th month. Yes, this predates the tribes of Israel. But there's nothing new under the sun. Solomon said it. I'm going to continue with our pattern. A couple of more here I want to show you. I want to show you one more. I'll leave this open. Oops, hang on, that's not what I want. Hang on, let me stop sharing. Let me pause and do a word. Okay, I want to share with you a screen. Numbers chapter 22. This is the story of Balaam. In the story of Balaam, the Israelites, the nation of Israel, the new nation of Israel, has already left Egypt. And in this story, we see that Balak had sent to Balaam, and he wanted Balaam to curse the Israelites. I'm not going to read you the story. I'm going to tell you the story. And it's in Numbers 22, and I want you to go back and read it with new eyes. Because in Numbers 22, Balaam is not speaking to a demon entity. He is speaking to the possessor of heaven and earth, the El that would later become the God known as the God of Israel. This is who Balaam is speaking to. We see him going and making sacrifice and waiting on this visitation from the possessor of heaven and earth, the God of Israel. And we see communication between the two. We even see in around verse 22 here that the creator of heaven and earth, the possessor of heaven and earth, the God of Israel, the Elohim of Israel, sends an angel to block the donkey of Balaam in the way. He could have struck him dead, but he didn't. There was a relationship here. There was a covenant relationship here. I'm not saying that Balaam was without sin because he would have taken money from Balak. It's true. But we're not looking at someone that didn't know, a non-Israelite right here at this point in our history that didn't know the possessor of heaven and earth, the Elohim of Israel. So I'd really like for you to take a look at that and see that with different eyes. Okay, we're going to go to another place. Okay, we're going back to Sodom and Gomorrah in the days of Abram. And it's going to get really interesting. At least it did for me. This is chapter 14, verse 17. I'm going to jump to 18. And Melchizedek, which is Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. He was the priest of the Most High God, and blessed him, Abram. And he blessed him, Abram, and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hands. And he gave him a tithe of all. Okay, I want to just change this. And I want to show you that Melchizedek was a melech, a king, and he was a Cohen. After I taught this to the Zoom group, as happens frequently when I teach something, I get more on the subject, and it's like layers and years of understanding. I bumped into Eli Shukron, which I had followed on this archaeology of the city of David, but I hadn't looked down there in a long time. I was actually going back to look at videos because of this whole idea of a Cohen and a king, which is what Hebrews calls our Messiah. being in Jerusalem at the time that Sodom and Gomorrah stood. Let me get out of this. So, King of Salem is actually Jerusalem. So we have a king and a high priest in the city of Jerusalem in the days of Abram. And we have Abram, giving tithe to this priest. And we have this Melchizedek in the land of Canaan, because that's what this land on this side of the Jordan River was known as, was the land of Canaan, before the Israelites were to dispossess them of their land that they had inherited through Noah as part of the covenant that Noah had with Elohim, just as the Israelite sons, the 12 tribes, were given land with their covenant. The creator of heaven, the possessor of heaven and earth, with his covenant with Noah, had divided the land among his sons here. And Canaan was on what we'll call the Israeli side of the river. Now, on this Israeli side of the river that the Canaanites possessed is this king of Salem, of the Most High God. Are you seeing that this is a non-Israelite? This is a non-12 tribes person in Jerusalem with the Canaanites, with a place of worship to the possessor of heaven and earth, in a timing that reflects that surely the inhabitants of this land before the tribes of Israel also had a covenant with Elohim. I'm going to start sharing this. So after I shared that, I went back and began looking at videos from Eli Shukron, which Eli in Hebrew is short for Eliyahu, which is, we would say in English, Eli, okay? And I went back and began to look for videos from him, and I want to bring up some points that I found from him about this location that we probably all know about. I know about. Let me pause this and get those quotes for you. Well, I just realized I had forgotten to push play, and I hope I've not dropped anything out of this very important aspect of the video in proving that these patterns represent covenants with other nations, full-fledged covenants. Okay, so this next, I'm not going to show you the screens on these. I will put them in the comment section of this video. But this next thing I want to talk with you about was when I went to find out what I could about this location in Jerusalem where this temple had been carved into bedrock that I've known about for quite a while, 5 years. Actually, it's been around more than that. They discovered it earlier than that, but it's not been talked about a lot. When I went to find out more information about that, I find out that Eli Shukron, which Eli is short for Eliyahu, Elijah, has pretty much left archaeology and spends his time, which I applaud, talking about this area that he excavated, which he's now calling it the Melchizedek Temple. I want to bring out some points on some of these videos that really struck me, and I'll post a link to each one. One of the things that Eli says is that if we look at what Melchizedek did in what he found in the temple. There in the bedrock, which remember a bedrock is the lowest beginning level of civilization before the other civilizations come. But in the bedrock, in the stone, where you can go no lower, he said one of the things that become apparent besides the bread and the wine with Abram before he became Abraham is that there was a stone there that was anointed with oil. In this Melchizedek temple on that level, and you can see these videos now, he gives full tours. There is a olive press for making olive oil. There are grooves cut in the floor for the blood of the sacrificial animal to drain away and be caught in a basin. And it's a very low rung. It doesn't reflect a high animal. It reflects a low animal like a lamb. There's a platform right there by these channels. There is these V-shaped cuts in that bedrock that Ellie feels like is a type of a support for a triangle for making these sacrifices. There was a room where they would put the holy things that were broken. You know, you don't just chuck them out like trash because they're broken. They have to be, from what they say, buried correctly. And there was a standing stone. And on this standing stone, of all of the things they uncovered, everything was covered with rock and rubble, but this one standing stone was covered with dirt. So he suggests that it was Melchizedek that taught Jacob to offer to Elohim, because we see when Jacob had the dream, he took the rock where he laid his head and he set it up as a pillar, and he called it Bethel, the place of God, the house of God, and he anointed that stone with oil. Now, his suggestion is that very likely that Jacob learned from the Melchizedek. We also see that after Abram had given tithe to Melchizedek, that later Abraham would return to Jerusalem, not to this area on Mount Zion near the Gihon Spring, but to Mount Moriah in Jerusalem to offer Isaac. And this again was before a Levitical priesthood out of the 12 tribes, or Kohanim out of the 12 tribes. Yeah, that's about it. I'm going to put those links in the comment box of the video. There's one more thing I want to show you to wrap this all together. And I'm going to take you clear back to the beginning of the Bible. I'm going to take you to Genesis, chapter 1, verse 2. And I want to show you something very interesting to bring this all together, to show you that from the very, 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 very beginning, whenever that was, which I now believe is before Genesis, because of these patterns of words that Elohim chooses to use. First of all, I'm going to show you two more things, but they relate. So let me do a search for you. Let me go here. Let me just put in replenish. If I can spell, my eyes are crossing. Okay, curiously, this word, which does mean full, or to make full, which doesn't bother me, because I understand that a new moon is not new, it's renewing. Okay, so to make full can be to fill again. Okay, this is the pattern of things we see from the beginning, that we start in Genesis 1 in darkness, and then he makes new again. He starts, so he starts with a dark sky and the appearing of a new moon to a full moon. Okay, so his new is not new to anybody but us. It's not new to him. It's new to us. Okay. Genesis 9:1. I'm going to just get rid of this. I won't. I'll just leave it. Let's start in Genesis 9:1. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and fill, replenish, fill the earth. And we know that this was a replenishing because God had just destroyed all humanity. And the word there for fill is the word malay or malah. And this is the same word I use today if I tell them I want them to fill my tank. It doesn't mean my tank has never been filled before. It means my tank is empty and it needs to be filled again. Look what he says in Genesis 1. And God blessed them. Okay, here he blessed Noah. Here he blessed Adam and Eve. And God said unto them, be fruitful. And here he says, God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and fill, replenish the earth and replenish the earth. Isn't that curious? That's identical. I want to suggest to you that this is a start over in Genesis, because now we're going to go look at that Genesis verse I was telling you about. And when I understood this, it pretty much blew me away. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Period. End of story. The possessor and the creator of all. He created the heaven and the earth. Whenever he did it, he's responsible for it. Now there's an and. And the earth was without form. That's a Hebrew word, tohu. And void. That's a Hebrew word, bohu. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now watch this. Okay, we're going to use this word, tohu. We're going to come right down here, and we're going to go, remember how this sounds, void, darkness, let's see, let me scoot it over, without form, void, darkness. Okay. So I think I lost that. I have to do this again. Without form, void, darkness. And we're going to go right here. And we're going to go to Jeremiah 4. We're going to open this up. My people are foolish. They have not known me. They are sottish children. They have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was tohu the bohu, just exactly like Genesis 1:2. And the heavens, they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, they undulated, and the hills moved lightly. To make light, okay? I beheld, and there was no man. In Genesis 1:2, there was no man. All the birds of the heavens fled. There were no animals yet. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was in a wilderness. And the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. For thus hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet I will not make a full end. For this shall the earth mourn, the heavens shall be black, because I have spoken it, I have purposed it. I will not repent, neither will I turn back. Jeremiah 4:27 says, yet I will not make a full end. I want to suggest to you that in Genesis 1:2, between verse 1 and 2 that Elohim had made a full end to what had been before verse 2. How can I say that? Well, he made a full end with Noah. He said to Moses in the wilderness, he could wipe out the people and make another people group. Making a full end was not a new idea to Elohim. It may be shocking to us. It may be something we've never considered. But to think that we're the only people who have ever been on the planet, and we're the only, and Israel is the only one that ever had a covenant with Elohim, is to deny that God punished Adam for the great transgression. Colossians 2:14 teaching, you'll learn about that. And Cain for the great transgression, Colossians 2:14, you'll learn about that. Denies that Abel offered the first fruits of his lamb at the end of the year, which is, by the way, when we do our barley inspections. Denies that Canaan, not Ham, was punished for uncovering his stepmother, possibly having sex with her, maybe just seeing her, I don't know. But it was his stepmother, Noah's wife, because that is the only place in the Bible that father's nakedness is used, is with Noah and in the Levitical law, where it says you don't uncover your father's wife because she is your father's nakedness. Is to deny that Noah didn't know clean from unclean, that he didn't make an offering of the clean animals when he come out of the ark. People don't believe the Noahide law lie. Noah had the same covenant as the 12 tribes of Israel. He had full understanding. Paul says in the New Testament that before sin entered, the law had no effect. Do you mean to tell me there was law before sin entered? Well, according to that verse, there was. And that sin entered with Adam, when Adam knowingly took of the fruit that Eve was deceived about. Colossians 2:14 will teach you about that teaching, that video. So when Adam fell, the law that already existed came into effect. Don't get caught up on what was before Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. I'll tell you what it was. It was a broken covenant with Elohim, and it was a complete end of whatever was wrong. I am not one of those persons who has a problem with the age of the earth and tries to match it with the age of the Bible and the timeline we are aware of. I don't think we're the first rodeo on the planet. I don't think we're the first event. And I think that Elohim deals with, just like Paul says, all men equally, neither Jew nor Gentile, that none of this stuff in his book exists until the breaking of the covenant, and then he starts separating. He starts divorcing. He starts dispossessing. He starts taking the goods and the things that he has given them in the covenant that he had with them and giving it to others who will follow him. Okay, stop sharing. Thank you for staying with me. Agree or disagree. These are the patterns I see. They're exciting to me. They tell me that I'm part of a very old covenant and that he's been faithful through the tribes of Israel to bring forth my kinsman redeemer and restore me to the things my forefathers lost. And for me, it's exciting. For me, it's very exciting to know that not only did they belong to Israel, but they belong to my forefathers. I can't prove there's Jewishness in me. Doesn't matter. I can prove my father was Noah. And so therefore, these covenants were mine, and my forefathers lost them. And he's given me the opportunity through the Messiah for them to belong to me again and to be in right standing with him. Thanks for watching.